Hey everyone, we got two firsts this week on the Rediscover podcast. One, we're on video for the first time, so if you are listening on Spotify, check it out on YouTube. Also, we've got a guest for the first time since doing this on my own, David Weck, the man. We talk about all things from going back to his childhood traumatic experiences from his kindergarten to fixing his feet from having incredibly weak feet to having some of the strongest feet out of anyone I know, from having a back injury that plagued him for a year to using the Swiss ball, which transformed his core strength, which led to the invention of the BOSU. And I think this guy's the Tesla of the human body, of biomechanics, and he's still quite misunderstood, and I'm only just starting to understand him more and more, and I want to help the world to understand him as well. And so I think it's a great chat we have between us, and I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I did. Okay, hello audience, how do humans? Welcome to another episode of the Rediscover Human podcast. I'm Tim Shieff, and on this episode is the first time I've ever had a guest, and I've waited for the right time to get the right guest. And this is a man I first met in 2019. I was really getting hardcore into biomechanics at that time. I was doing functional patterns for about maybe a year. I'd done my human foundations course with functional patterns, and doing quite an intensive in Bristol with the coach there, Bobby. And around that time, that's a whole story in itself, but he decided to ban me from functional patterns, and I felt a bit lost, and I didn't know where to go with my biomechanics journey, because I thought that was the holy grail of biomechanics at that time. And so within a few days, I was in near Manchester doing a run with Tony Riddle, the natural lifestylist, and a mutual friend of ours, Arthur Powlins, was saying, "Have you heard of this guy, David Weck?" And I hadn't heard of him. And so that night I was sleeping in the back of my car before we ran the following day. So I'd met him that evening, done an ice bath with Tony and Arthur and Martin. And that night I was in the back of my car, couldn't sleep, on Instagram, and just going through video after video on this guy's Instagram. And he was wearing 2 pairs of glasses, sometimes 3 pairs of glasses, talking about locomotion and running, and talking about techniques that I had never comprehended, that seemed simple, but there seemed like there was potential in what he was sharing with these pulses that he'd invented. And so after that crazy Instagram binge, and the next day I ran with Tony Riddle, I still had a lot to work to do and understand. I took on a whim, I booked a flight out to San Diego to do their Weck method qualification, and it was the 11th one they'd ever done. I think they started within the year of that. So I flew out to San Diego completely on a whim, didn't know anyone. I rented a car, I was staying in a hotel, and I got to meet David for the first time. Now, I direct messaged him previously before I flew out, and he just said, "Come on out." And so I didn't reply to it, I don't think, or I just on a whim just showed up, and he was like, "Oh, it's you." Anyway, so I got through the 3 days of Weck method qualification, and it was so groundbreaking and game changing in my understanding of how we currently train the body. And it was just a whole side avenue or tangent, or a whole different approach to training the body that was a level below the way we currently think about training the body. And they had such a different approach, which we'll get into, to do with balance and pattern training, that is just so overlooked by almost all of the industry right now. And locomotion, there is the rise of biomechanics is looking at locomotion and how we can train that into people. And so these had a whole approach, all invented, discovered, rediscovered, founded by David himself. And I stayed on after those first 3 days for another 10 days, which I got to spend just me and David most of the time. We drove up to Los Angeles with Michael Williams, met Shane Faison. We stopped in Joshua Tree, where it was just me and him for several days. And I spent 2 weeks, and it was a life-changing 2 weeks, to say the least. I got as much download as I could in that time from David and his years and years of life of research, which we'll get into how he got there. And it was really, my life has been changed since then in terms of my passions for my passions, I'd always say, is mathematics and the human body. And this is the biomechanics is the blend of that. And this is the man that is leading, in my eyes, that field of the 21st century. And as far either side that I can see as well. So for that introduction, I'd like to introduce first guest on Rediscover Human podcast, Mr. David Weck.
Tim, I'm really looking forward to this series.
I'm so glad we're able to finally do this. Now, I don't want to make it more than an hour. I'd like to do several. And then if people really enjoy it, they can tune into the next one. And so for this one, I want to get the full backstory on David Weck, on your history, into how you came into get to biomechanics, what your passions were when you were younger, and all the steps in between, how you came to invent the BOSU ball. For those that don't know, David invented the BOSU, one of the most overlooked genius tools that people just do not understand it. And I actually only understood it myself as far as I had a new level of understanding about 3 or 4 months ago. I watched your Zen 8 or Zen 10 video, and it was like, whoa, I didn't even get what the BOSU was at that depth before. And so I wanted to help to have this conversation so that we can help those others that are seeking, that can have that understanding in their head, that are ready to understand what you're sharing with the world. And so, yeah, thanks for joining me. So could you just tell us then a little bit about your history growing up? Where did you grow up? What were you into? Was it mathematics? Was it sport? What was your passions?
Okay, so I was born in New Jersey, and I was the first of 4 children. I was adored by my mother and, sort of put on my father's shoulders. So, a lot of a lot of, I guess, focus on this world is mine. Mm-hmm. Sort of that, like every need, everything, I'm the best. And then I love sports and I love movement. I was a very kind kid. I never picked on anybody, including my siblings. And at 6 years old, I lost a foot race. And I remember it sort of didn't compute because I had never lost a foot race. I was pretty fast. And at 6 years old, not just one, but 2 boys beat me. And so that was sort of the beginning of oh my God, I'm not the best, but I have a competitive drive where I want to be the best. And I think for any alpha person, I think what you have to do is you have to seek to carve out that which you can be best at, given your abilities and your circumstances. And I love sports my whole life. So my intensity for training, once I got to be about 14 years old, was always looking for more so that I could dunk a basketball, run a faster 40, just be a better athlete in every regard. So those were my objectives. And I got to dunk a volleyball, could never really put down a basketball. I ran a 4.6 40, which is respectable, right? Division III football. And I played the game of football with a mental approach. So I studied film in order to have the ability to read the offense and predict probability-wise what play is coming next. And then throughout the process of the game, computing information that was gleaned in the first half to now play better in the second half, right? And I became very good at it just because I put the work in. If you spend 20 hours analyzing film and you're looking for these clues, well, then you're going to play better on Saturday. So that's what I did. I have a very intense nature, and it's extremely competitive. Now, the college that I went to was cover your butt, get good grades, which I did, graduate with honors, and then go work on Wall Street or go work as a consultant and make a ton of money, have a family, have a vacation house, have the college paid for, and live your life. That was sort of the default when football was over, because football was over at the end of college. Couldn't continue to do that which I love most. But then I realized I don't want to do the other alternative either. Like, I want to live my life. I don't want to just, make money. I want to live my life. So I took a departure point where I became an actor. So just dove into it, went to New York City. I picked up an agent very quickly, and I started to, get some jobs, and I became a personal trainer to fund that effort. And then I discovered rollerblades in Manhattan. I lived in Manhattan. And the rollerblades were like the perfect expression of effortless power. Because like one stride covers so much distance, especially if it's downhill. And it's just like a red light or a green light, 3/4 of the block away, I'm gonna get it. Right? And if I don't get it, I'm gonna hockey stop. I'm gonna jump over the trash can. I'm gonna hold on to the car. It was like a real life video game, rollerblading. So I fell so much in love with rollerblading that I didn't take them off for 6 years. So if I were indoor, I was barefoot essentially. And if not barefoot, I put my sneakers on inside as a personal trainer. And then I was in skates every other minute. Like I went out in the evening on a Saturday night wearing skates, because then I don't have to take a taxi and I'm a little bit taller and you can't tell I got them on anyway. Right? So what the result of this was my feet became unbelievably weak. I'm talking princess in a pea. You're gonna suffer with the least amount of pressure applied to that foot. And it was so bad that I couldn't walk on flat cement for more than about 50 feet. Flat cement at a swimming pool. If I was here and I walked 50 feet there, I had to sit down. The pain was so intense.
Wow.
Yeah. I was on a rocky beach in France and I'm crawling off on my hands and knees, which didn't feel good, but I could not do it through my feet. And so, unbeknownst to me, I didn't understand biomechanics back then. So I didn't realize that, every part intimately relates to other parts, and you can either use that to your advantage or you can suffer in ignorance, right? It's going to be some degree. And now my competitive nature, when I invented the BOSU ball, I said, I want to be the world's foremost authority on the subject of balance measured by locomotion.
Well, we want to get into that.
Okay, but I'm sure putting it on the path of
go for it.
My intensity to study biomechanics with the God's honest measurement of time, distance covered over time, was my lighthouse, where I knew if I was making progress toward better, and I knew if I wasn't. Mm-hmm. So God's honest. Right? This is not some research study with 19 soccer players doing this or that. This is the God's honest truth. And if it works for me and it works for a person I can teach, well, then odds are it's universal. It will work for everyone. Mm-hmm. Right? And so back to this weak feet.
Yeah.
With those weak feet, I wrenched my back pulling a motorcycle that had fallen, very awkward position, frantic because the gas is pouring out.
Your own motorcycle.
I got an acting job that paid me like $8,000, and with some of that money, I bought a motorcycle. Mm-hmm. But I didn't spend that much on the motorcycle, so the starter motor didn't work, and so I had to jump start it every morning against traffic, and it was narrow, and I had to swerve, and I was side saddle because that's how I jump started it, and it fell over.
Yeah.
And so I yanked it up, and I felt my back, like I felt like, ooh, like there's something twinged. And 3 days later is when it gave out. I was with a client, and he rode a bike, and I skated behind him around Central Park because that was sort of our warm up. Then we're going back to his apartment to work out. And as soon as I got into his apartment, I collapsed and whited out. Like, I don't remember, and the pain was so intense. I'm glad I didn't defecate. But so I'm laying on the floor in his apartment and I can't get up. I'm laying on the floor for a couple hours. It was so painful. My body had been compensating for every single step I took with a tensional rise because my feet couldn't resolve it. So if you step on something sharp, your body goes up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's subcortical, like low level tension. It's a Chinese water torture that eventually it adds up to you're sweeping the porch and your back goes out.
So because your feet were so weak, when you used other parts of your body, they were overloaded already because they were already taking tension from what the feet
What happens is the deep the deep-rooted muscles that are literally like fine-tuning the articulation of the spine. Those things can reflexively get into a sort of a game of like, oh no, you're not going to move there because the pain is so intense. And then if you don't fully resolve that, and you're always putting that sort of stress that when I'm supporting myself with my feet, the back is doing more than it has to. Now that tensional protection never goes away. And it becomes a seed or a grain of sand that leads to chronic pain, because then the compensatory action of the other muscles has to now deal with the fact that at the center, the
it's
most
not doing
important
anything.
part,
Yeah,
it's in stasis.
It's not fluid anymore. Yeah,
it's not fluid anymore, and like it was chronic pain for more than a year. And I'm talking about, if I were sitting here now, I'd be doing this, and I'd be like I had to like artificially sit up, and it was misery. Flying on an airplane, the seat don't go back far enough. It's flying on an airplane.
And let me just take that point to say, those listening on Spotify, this is the first time I've done a video version, because David's very animated and he's going to show us some stuff. And so if you are just on Spotify and you're not aware, there is a YouTube version where you can watch the video. So yeah, thanks. Back to that then, David. So your back was from this motorcycle fell over, you caught it or just stopped it from smashing, whatever. Your back pulled, you went to your friends, and then for about a year from then, your back was really weak, and your feet were still weak at this point.
I would say that my back was painful.
Painful, yeah.
So extreme pain, and always on the verge of like oh.
Yeah, I think people can relate to that. Okay. That kind of and so, what was the next step for you then?
So the next step was, seeing doctors and reading books and, trying to figure out, read McKenzie, read Sarno, read all these things, back devices. There was a store called Relax the Back. I mean, so I was doing everything I could, and I was begging surgeons to just cut me open and fix it, because that's sort of my mindset was, okay, let's get this over with.
Back then, that was like, okay, this is
It was that bad, and I didn't see light within a tunnel. Like I didn't understand the factors. So the root causes. So, which was ultimately my feet. Now I went to physical therapy. A little bit of remediation from the pain, but nothing significant. And then it went right back. So it didn't work. And on the last day of therapy, the therapist said, "Well, since we're not going to be doing this anymore, here's an exercise ball, and here's a couple exercises." And so I got the exercise ball, the big inflatable ball. And I
Swiss ball. Do they call it Swiss ball sometimes?
Yeah, back then it was called the Swiss ball, but in terms of the market for that, you had certain pockets. It was a resistable, a flexible, a stability ball. They were everywhere back then. And they became extremely popular. They're not nearly as popular today as they once were 22 years ago. So anyway, it was one night on the internet, I saw Paul Chek standing on the stability ball with a barbell on his back. And that gave me the idea to just, let me see if I can stand on it. And so I was very cautious. I had a pull-up bar in my apartment, put the ball there, held on to the pull-up bar so I can't fall, perch myself up on it and let go a little bit, let go, let go, a lot. And I got good at standing on the ball. And unbeknownst to me, when you're standing on a ball, there's a center line action of force, which has all sorts of good consequences for training, your capacity to move. Because everything is about the center line and your relationship to it. And also on the ball, your feet are like forced to sort of articulate and use muscles that you haven't experienced, just unique to that task, especially at first when you don't have the coordination settled where you can do less muscular effort. In the beginning, it's a lot of muscular effort that you're trying to like keep that thing there. And as I did that, my back started to feel better and I felt light at the end of the tunnel. And there was another aspect of it that is this writing reflex where if you can be very soft and subtle in your balance and you can experience like that, boom, I lost balance, but it's not dangerous. it's akin to, oh, my phone is overheated, I gotta turn it off and turn it back on, right? You almost create a neural reset when you have these reflexive sort of balance moments that aren't overwhelming and don't lead to damage.
It feels like it's flushing out like the imbalance or something. Well,
it feels like it sends a signal through that take things that are only partially on, that's causing like the root of the problem to activate and then let go. So they're not stuck in the middle anymore.
Like I actually had in America, I had treatment on my lower back when I was shooting MTV's Ultimate Parkour Challenge. My lower back had seized up like that, and I had this electric shock therapy, and every few seconds it was pulsing, and that was actually one of the most therapeutic deep muscular things I've ever had. So what you're saying is that it was a sort of a natural version of that. An organic, natural version is when you play with balance and you get that reflexive shock that was sending pulses into the dense sort of tightened up parts, and was going, if we can work this out, right, we can start to relax.
What happens is, if your body weight rises up, it buys you more time, right? So if I'm higher, I have more time before I fall.
That's why cats lift their back, right?
Yes, and you create more vertical potential.
Yep, to then drop with gravity into.
Yeah, to then drop and explode. I just saw a video of a cat attacking a dog, and it went up like the Halloween cat, and then it launched and scratched that dog in the face.
All right.
You got to have claws, and then most dogs ain't gonna mess with kitty claws, right? Mm-hmm. That's like showing up with a knife and saying, "All right, let's go."
Okay, right. So you started noticing after each session, how often did you do this, and how long for?
Every single day. I'm intense, so I was on that ball all the time. Like, I'd be over to client's house, and they'd have to run to the bathroom or something, and I'd just stand on the ball waiting for them to come back. So
you learned how to just hop on it, like, eventually.
I learned how to hop on it. I learned how to grab it and sort of jump a rope over. I learned how to jump from one to another. So it was just having fun.
I love it. Yeah,
doing what little boys do, right?
Yeah, and in that playful fun, your body became stronger, more supple.
What happened was, superseding that playful fun was remedy and release, where it was like, I'm not aching all the time, so I'm just spending more and more time on this modality, making me more and more secure in my ability to protect myself, and the feet getting strong enough to send that and interact with the ground in a manner that the feet are doing their necessary job. And it was all unbeknownst to me. I didn't realize any of this stuff. So the inherent risk of a fall is that the fall can be catastrophic. And if you're exploring the boundaries, you're going to fall. But when you're exploring the yang boundaries, right, jumping from one to another, you are prepared for the catastrophic fall. So it reduces the likelihood.
You're expecting it. If it happens, you can turn out of it. Or
you're jumping in a manner that you're making sure that you're not going to land with your feet shooting out from under you. You're sending your center of mass. If anything, I'm going to fail forward. I'm not going to fail back. Right. So you're expecting the danger, so you mitigate the danger with your actions. But I was also exploring the yin, the softer side, based in Feldenkrais, which is a somatic methodology for healing and improvement of function, very deep in the nervous system. So what I would do on the ball, and this was the night that I invented the BOSU ball, the big one, was I was on a 75 centimeter ball. That's like the big one, bigger than the one in the gym. And then I closed my eyes, which is a whole thing on itself.
Can I just ask on that note, did you have a preference? Sorry about to go into this, but did you practice between all the 3 or 4 different sizes? I've got 3 different sizes in the not at the moment.
I lived in a 250 square foot apartment. I had like 8 stability balls.
Yeah. And did you prefer any? Did you have the peanut one? Did you like?
I didn't have a peanut, and I preferred the ones that were good quality. So I don't good quality ones, and
so size wasn't as more.
Here's what it is: the different sizes is the small one is good and fun for a while, but it's standing on it becomes less fun because it's less challenging.
Okay, easier.
The 75 centimeter one, it's a little bit big, so it's, you know, it's not the preferred one. If I'm going to do tricks, it was the 65 normal size.
The medium.
The middle one
Goldilocks.
was the one that I would do the tricks on. And so, but for this one, I was like, I want the challenge. So I went the soft side, close my eyes, and then I tilt my head back to upset the proprioceptive input, the visual input, and the vestibular input, all three combined in a very unguarded, relaxed, okay. And that ball shot out from under me so fast that I landed on it with my mass, and it did a backflip over the back, and I landed across the apartment, smashed into, like, you know, the counter, and I started kicking my feet to make sure I could still kick my feet. I was that scared.
You thought you'd paralyze yourself.
I was going through space in an uncontrolled manner, smashing my head and neck into, like, you know, something that ain't gonna move or move much. And, you know, you know, you don't even feel pain in that emergency situation. It's like the pain comes after, right? I was like, kicking, oh my God, thank God, thank God. And so I sort of, you know, had that come to Jesus moment where it's like, how am I going to explore that soft side if I'm going to risk breaking my neck?
If it's the hardest side you've come across, yeah.
So how do I continue to explore the soft side? And then I was like, because I was getting so much benefit from it. Because now you're getting the subtlety of the strength of your feet. It's not just how strong you are, it's how coordinated you are is the key, right? Stronger without coordination can be counterproductive. So coordination is the king, strength is the queen, right? And coordination is dictated by balance. So balance is it's the king. It's an equilibrium that is a sustainable thing that's not hurting you. That's essentially what balance is. And that fear and just, sense of like self-preservation. And I was like, how do I do this? I'm not going to do that again. And that night I thought, what if I cut the ball in half? Oh, and I shot out of bed. Like, it was just like, oh my God, I've never seen that. There's millions of these balls all over the world. I've never seen that. Just think how useful it be, because you don't got to just stay. You can lay on it. You could jump on it. You could do anything you want on it when the side's up and it's stable. It's like a trampoline. It's like a trampoline that's giving you an outward of center force versus a trampoline that gives you an inward center of force. If you're jumping on a trampoline, it's encouraging this, you know, the pronation of the foot because you're deepest in the middle. A BOSU ball is the opposite. You learn how to load from the outside in on a BOSU ball, or a proportional balance actually of the load of outside and inside in a proportion that will lead to better biomechanics on the ground just because of that three-dimensional surface. So there's it's a profound training stimuli that is doing all sorts of underneath things that fortify your ability to use and coordinate your strength with that vertical timing and direction of like, okay, I'm really good at going down and up, and my feet know how to play the game so that I'm getting the most out of my body. I'm not leaking anything. That's where it led to. And
you give up the instant because the ball's underneath you and it can shoot out from under you. But what you liked about it was you could compress it. There's still balance involved. There's still reflexive decisions being made. This is one thing I really love about the BOSU and the stability balls is you set up the parameters for the body to make its own calculations. You just have to be focused, and you have no choice but to be focused if you might fall off it or whatever. And so you're not having to do sets or reps or think too much or calculate. Like, the body is intelligent, and you're allowing the intelligence of the body to discover itself and to realize its potential. And so you took away the fact that the ball could shoot out from under you, and you made that part solid, but you wanted to keep the compression. But what's so good about what you kept with the BOSU ball? You take away the instability.
What is so good about it at that fundamental level, before we talk about nervous system priming greater strength? That's so good at that.
There's so many different levels.
Right. But what, yeah, it's good as a lever and a positioner. It's better for bench pressing. I mean, it's just, it's an incredible tool. Right?
Yeah.
Better for a box squat. You can use this as a power lifter who lifts 1,000 pounds, or you can use it in rehab because you broke your ankle. Right. If we want to talk about sort of the neurological benefits of it.
The Zen 10, is it?
Zen 10. Yeah. We called Zen 10 where it was that minimalistic.
Is this touching on that when you say neurological?
We're enriching the proprioception with this dome, right? So you're getting the sort of the directional coordinated.
Could you explain proprioception just a little bit?
Okay, proprioception is your body's sense of itself in space. So when I raise my arm, my proprioceptors tell me that my arm is up here. So it's the nervous system networked through the fascia that lets you know where you are in space. So if I want to grab the can, I know that I'm feeling where I go. And that's what you're talking about. Is the only way to learn something physical is to feel it. And if you're playing a musical instrument, the only way to learn it is to feel it in association to the note is true, right? So you can't play the guitar if it's not playing chords that work, but you can. And a lot of that is pruning away the inefficiency. Yes. So when you train the nervous system to be softer, you get more sensitive and the differentials get smaller. So you're fine tuning the balance. And so you're making yourself faster reflexively, because what you learn to do is you learn to drop as opposed to fright raise. So your center of mass learns to drop, and you can raise your feet so you can land, as opposed to shoot up and your center's high and now you're doomed to fail, right? If you react the wrong way. And what the BOSU ball does is it provides you this, anybody can get on it and just balance on the wall or some kind of a bar if you can't stand on it by yourself. And you can put someone into a situation where their balance will fail and create a reflex, but it is safe. So now you get this contradiction, whereas you could slip on a banana peel, but you're not going to get hurt. So it's a massive opportunity to fail, learn with no consequence. So you can learn, when I closed my eyes, I fell back in my heels, but I just opened my eyes and put my foot on the ground. Yeah. So on another balance training device, I broke my neck or my wrist or whatever. And on this thing, I can do it again right now. There's no price for failure. And when you think of what you could do as a human being if you could not fail, or if failing didn't matter, you would take so much more chances and you would get so much further, because failure is just a wall or parameter that, puts you back on the path of success. Yeah. Bumper plates. Yeah, bumper plates, right? Yeah. That's the way you got it. You can't treat them as like vortexes that never end. You fail, right? Change, move. Yeah. So that it was the Zen 10 video, and I keep coming back to this because it was on. I started digging into your old. I was like, okay, let me dig into David's history, because I heard on a podcast you talk about the weak feet thing, and I thought, yeah, I've got pretty weak feet, and you seem like someone from when we met who has the least weak feet I've ever met, because you wear minimal shoes all day, you run around all day, on like the hardest tarmac, out in Joshua Tree in the desert on the hard floor. Not only do you run, you you use this pulsing action, which we'll talk about in the future, but you're driving your weight down into that foot, which has no cushion beneath it, and propel yourself forwards in every step that you take. And so I was digging back into YouTube. I went, let me just go in order of the date uploaded from the oldest to the newest. Let me see the first video you ever put up. And your first videos were where you were rolling out the sole of your foot. Yeah. And you were explaining about pull the toes up. And so I started practicing this. And I guess it's a bit of a tangent, but we'll come back. But I found this so profound that I had night sweats for, I think it was 6 out of 10 nights, the first 10 days that I did this sole roll, where I got a cylinder, like a rolling pin or a broomstick handle, and I'd put the front of my foot down and I'd lift my toes up and I'd slowly drive from front to back.
and I could feel all the like, little crystally things like you're having a foot massage reflexology session, but you control the pressure, you control the intensity, you control how often you do it, how long you do it for. There's something I'd rolled my feet out before on like a golf ball, and golf ball is kind of nice for heel, but for the sole of the foot, the cylinder was like a rolling pin that just drove from the front to the back. Whereas a ball, you try and roll your feet out on the ball, and it just starts to push the muscles, the fascia all over in another direction, and it doesn't really make much progress. You can do it a little bit, but this was like, what is this doing? And I got the night sweats, and I know for me, who's into the healing journey and knowing my body when I'm going through detox or something, night sweats is something that I seem to get, and know that there's either toxins stored in the feet or that the feet are connected to the organs, and that it would trigger the organs to release things when you start to massage these. As in, I'm getting into sort of traditional Chinese medicine, you see how those things are all connected. I was like, something is happening here. And then my feet just, I won't say it alone fixed my feet, but it was certainly a huge part of my journey of like undoing these knots in my body, was to spend a month sole rolling the feet every day and going through that process. And that was kind of, I went back, and we'll come forward to the BOSU, but can I ask you like how you discovered that as a practice? You shared that, and that got really good views and really good comments like on the Weck Method page.
Well, what I would say is that I'm athletic enough to know that I can feel what is athletically true or false. So my body's athletic enough to put it together where I can feel, oh, okay, I need to develop this because this is going to take me to a next level. And I know that, like, I know it, like, because I can do it, right? And you can start demonstrating superior results, which is the empirical proof is what is absolutely necessary if you're going to, spend your time doing this versus that, right? And so what I discovered in the feet was, it was a detailed study of anatomy combined with a lot of the esoterics, where the Eastern study, Chinese medical school, these retreats up to Esalen Institute, and then hints from people like pain is weakness leaving your body, and cues like go for the delicious discomfort, find the boundary, right? Find the perfect boundary where you're not having to defend yourself, but you're on the cusp of having to do that. That's how much pain you should experience.
Like a perfect massage.
Think about it. Like if you were to polish a car, if you don't polish hard enough, it doesn't polish. You polish too hard, you wipe the paint off. You got to polish it with the right pressure and time to get the job done. And that's what you could do with, you have to sequentially do it. So there's a huge chunk of meat in your foot from the back of the fifth metatarsal to the outside of the heel. It's like a huge arch there with a ton of meat that if you can make that strong, now you can tie in the outside of your foot to your heel. And now you're essentially learning how to leverage the substantial power through the calcaneus, through the bone, that you get to leverage forward, in effect, to now create a stronger relationship.
Right? The outside edge of the feet, right? The outside blade.
Yeah, the outside is the initiation, right? So you're initiating ground contact with the outside, and that's practically universal. Whether you're pigeon-toed or not, it's practically universal that you're going to go from the outside in, right? It's sort of the way the skeleton's set up. So that first arch is the first arch. And when you find that delicious discomfort where it's like, oh, I can't even stand on a broomstick. I have to use a 4-inch diameter, PVC pipe.
Yeah.
And I need to hold on to the door at first because it hurts, right? And then, through the time of finding and training right at that boundary, and actively spreading your toes. So you're actively spreading and spreading to make it so that the pressure on the bottom doesn't cause them to flex. And in the beginning, the pressure on the bottom always causes it to flex because the pain here guards your body and your body goes into this protective flexion. And what you need to do if you're going to get the strongest feet possible is be able to step on that sharp rock or, that surface that would normally hurt and have no reaction from a protection standpoint to let it press in, and that's just pressure.
The way we might have been if we never grew up wearing cushioned shoes, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you were constantly, you'd have giant calluses on your feet that you wouldn't even get cut if you stepped on a pricker, right? So that's the level of. It's a very simple strategy. It's just extend your toes as far as you can and spread them, and get good at standing on a cylinder. And eventually, when you can stand on a broomstick, and right there with your toes spread, you have strong feet. Your feet are strong. Because pain is weakness leaving the body, and you don't feel pain under your feet. So you're not weak, you're strong.
Yeah. So how did that tie in then with the BOSU? Because that's the yin and the yang almost. It's like the rock under the feet. I heard you mention that, so I'm not going to claim to take that from myself. But you're like the broomstick is like the rock, the hard surface, and the BOSU is almost like the sand, but it's this controlled environment with which there's so many other benefits as well.
And so here now we get into different placement on the dome creates different training stimuli for the appendage on the dome. Okay. So I can train where I'm on the back side of the dome and I'm creating that extension through the toes, right? Yeah. That goes all the way to the ball of the foot. And then I can use that type of a contraction to go strongest and longest on a BOSU ball. I can tip my feet forward on it and lift my toes and try to do it with the balls of the feet without engaging the toes, which is it brings more awareness to the area and more coordination, control, and strength to the area when you do these things.
So how would you go about something like that? And this brings us full circle to the Zen 10. That was the video you put out where you gave 10 different exercises where you stand on a BOSU. Was it the original BOSU or the Pro Elite?
Well, you could do either one. The Elite's going to be easier because it's firm.
That's what I started doing on the Elite. I literally picked this up like a week ago because I was like, I've been playing on the Elite and I was like,
you're starting over now.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm actually missed out because this is just like the Swiss ball with it's a lot softer and more malleable under the feet. And so the Zen 10 was when I watched that video, and it was 10 different exercises where you stand on a BOSU ball, you close your eyes, and you go through and I must say I adapted it. I put it in the course I recently released for the feet, the outside edge. I added a hinge and squat, and I took out a few things. But essentially, the idea is you close your eyes, and so then you're training your vestibular system, your proprioception. Balance is made up of three things, right? Proprioception, vestibular, and Visual, okay. Yeah, visual.
Yeah, but the proprioceptive is the kinesthetic.
That's the kinesthetic. And then the vestibular is the inner ear. So as soon as you tilt your head, that changes it. So when your eyes are closed, you take away the visual and you focus purely. So suddenly we're now training the vestibular, training the proprioception, which doesn't get trained when their eyes are open in the same way. So you go through. Go on.
And it's really the visual and vestibular. The key to those is they have to relate to one another, and they both depend upon one another, because when your horizon line is flat and the trees and the things are vertical, you're literally seeing a grid where you have consistent knowledge of horizontal and vertical. And we have it all over the place. Any room that you're in has verticals and it has horizontals. Yeah. And that matches with vestibular. And so if you take the eyes away, the grid goes away. And that real time of like, it's so ingrained in you that both are happening together that when you remove one, the vestibular doesn't, he lost reference. And so now he has to relearn to sort of orient and feel like, okay, especially if the proprioception is changing on you. And so there's a wealth of neural capacity we can develop just by closing your eyes. And then the combination of closing the eyes and tilting and turning, et cetera, for the head, now you're getting a vestibular input without the benefit of, my eyes can create the grid again, so I can feel and know where I am. So the proprioceptors are sending signals. Now, if you go on a sailboat and the water gets choppy and you're prone to seasickness, you're less likely to get seasick if you're on the deck, because then your eyes are seeing things change while your balance is feeling it change. But if you go into the hull, you're now like your environment is like, you know, like
that's like you get car sick, right? If you read in the car,
there's an incongruence between what your eyes are telling you and what your body's feeling you in that. And so the BOSU ball allows you to go that direction very safely. And it's something that is not sexy because it doesn't create weight loss and it doesn't, you know, shape your body. And it's like, okay, the athletes are like, what am I doing here? So it often comes in coincides with an injury where where someone does slow it down, where it's just, okay, let's just get it down to as little as possible so that we have the full range of relaxation. And the full range of relaxation gives you a greater differential in terms of your ability to go from relaxed to tense. And if you're stuck in the middle because you have just residual tension that can't go away, you can't generate as much power because your differential is less and you're sort of like have an emergency brake stuck there.
Yeah.
Right. So neurally, you can help clear that out. And then by training compression, you can now take a force factor and accelerate the speed of the current of that force because of elasticity. And the easiest way to think of it is not compression, but it's elastic elongation. So a slingshot that's elastic can have 100 pounds of pull on it versus 100-pound weight. But the slingshot's going to send its mass to the ground so much faster than the cannonball that is 100 pounds. Right? And so compression, if I'm pressing in 100 pounds of force, the elasticity is sending that 100 pounds out faster. There's almost like a current that as you continually try to compress, there's this, it's not quite isometric. Like there's a tiny little bit of that like static, like, and so it's an expometric because it's not iso, it's expo. You're getting an exponential speed factor when you're training elastics. And so if you want to enhance the nervous system to its maximum, you have to include elastic training or you can't get as powerful. All right. It's not everything that you have to do, but it is something that you have to do. And especially in Weck method, we define the coiling core. We're the ones who defined it, what it means to coil the core. And then you apply elastic to these positions and then learn transitions. You're firing up the nervous system into the positions where you need to be if you're optimized for the combination of three dimensions all harmonizing at once. And it's an invaluable modality. And so that's another use of the BOSU ball is to prime it through the hands and prime it through the feet.
Yeah.
So that you can, and there's a three-dimensional aspect of a BOSU ball that makes it very difficult to understand the translation to two dimensions. And the map and the globe in the classroom that you went to school, the reason the map looks all weird and is not connected, it's a different shape and all that, is because they're trying to get the proportionate sizes correct. And you have to wrap it around a globe. So you can't get the distance relationships and positional relationships and the sizes accurate on a 2D surface. You have to sacrifice one of those to represent the globe on flat. So
is this relating to the feet on the BOSU? Is that what you, or is that a completely different?
Yes, correct. Yeah. And so static standing on a BOSU
the foot, ball, which is a 3D shape, the BOSU adapts.
Yes, and the static standing on a BOSU ball, especially positioned in a specific spot on the dome, gives you a neurological active ability as you enter into locomotion and start moving somewhere. And the three-dimensional reality of, this is like working with my natural skeletal weighting sequence. And it's sort of springing the foot into this potentiated position that is the initiation. And then, boom, you cycle through and you come to the inside, outside to the inside. And the BOSU ball just inherently makes you better at that. And then we'll talk about it later, but that led to soul steps.
Yeah.
Which remarkably resembles a very specific position on the dome.
Yes. Yeah. Well, on the BOSU, while we're still on it, because I just had another memory of when I first did that, the Zen 10 workout, and you say in the video that if you do this before you train, like before a football player plays football, or rugby, or American football player goes and has to dodge people, you close your eyes, you do 5-10 minutes of vestibular training, you come off it and you feel so much more in tune with your balance. And just as a warm-up for athletes, like I don't know, I just think eventually you'll see some athletes that see the value in it, that will be doing that before they go on the basketball court.
Here's how I think it actually works in reality. Is I think it's a rite of passage where you do it for a time, do it for a month straight, and just do it for 5 minutes every day for a month straight. Learn what you learn, which is going to be a faster reflex to load than up. So you're going to start to prune away that fundamental protection because your body knows how to align itself, relax.
You feel less jumpy, and you feel like your center of gravity starts to lower, your center, like your balance.
You are reflexively faster because you're not working against yourself with protection. You're working on production. So, and just as a parkour athlete, like if you freak yourself out about that jump, you're not going to make it. But if you don't freak yourself out, then you will make it. And there are times, I'm sure, when a parkour person says, not today, not that one, because it's just ain't right. So
yeah, absolutely.
Right. And now with the athletes, I think it's more rite of passage, meaning if I take the time for my nervous system to experience it and know it, now I can start to normalize that. And now I don't need the BOSU ball so much like every time because I've learned it. And now it means that I could go back to the BOSU ball and further learn it. But once you've learned it, your body knows it now.
Well, and for me, that's a sign of a true fundamental practice, is that you don't need to spend money every day for 10 years. Like, you don't need to be in the gym. Like with muscle, it's something that you need to upkeep, and there's obviously value in keeping it, but there's something that you're fighting against the body's natural weight that it wants to be to keep it. Whereas something like that, where you're training balance, something like rope practice, it's not something. A rite of passage is exactly what I love about it. Is it's put the time in, let the body download it, and then you can move on and spend it something else. That's great. I don't want to have to do this for 10 years of my life if it's giving me value. But you might want to choose.
There are through the years, I started rope training in 2004, and my great innovation, and I think it's a great innovation, is just don't jump through it.
Let's talk on that in the next podcast.
Oh,
I'll let you go on your point. Yeah.
Right.
Sorry. Right. I just want to say these. That's great to me. That's money. That's like, okay, practice this, and then I can, and then maybe once a month, every few weeks, I can just rebalance.
Yes. And here's what I was going to say. So go back to 2004 to now. There's been spans of many months where I haven't even touched the rope because I know the rope.
Yeah.
And I can always go back to the rope, but I'm applying what I learned with the rope to the next thing. Bruce Lee says the boat gets you across the river, then you got to climb the mountain. You don't need the boat. And then there's another river. We'll grab the rope and use it again, right? That's great.
So this. Sorry, I'll just because I don't want to go on for two. I want to make this concise. I've not actually timed it. So one final question, and then I'll go into the final point. Right. With the Swiss ball, would you still recommend that? Because it gives you something slightly different from the BOSU. You have, would you still recommend to do some? Because I was playing with it recently, and it was really helping. I came up with some exercises for my shoulder that I just explored, and it really helped because the shoulder was making calculations, and it was like, wow, my shoulder's opening up. It's getting flexible because it's getting stable, because it's figuring out what balance is. Did you just stand on the Swiss ball? That was the main exercise you did?
No. The Swiss ball is an incredibly valuable tool. Again, another rite of passage.
Yeah.
Where I think if you can learn to be playful on it, that's probably going to be the greatest value.
Meaning, I love that. That's the way God made it, right? Play is going to get to the ultimate.
Here's a very useful exercise to learn. Is learn how to Superman on the ball. So lay on top of it on your, front, put your hands and feet to the ground, and then learn how to take your hands and feet off the ground and balance. And you're going to do all sorts of like swimming in the air to change the lever. And it's going to be all this all over the place. And 2 weeks from now, you're going to be able to like be perfectly still and balance. And so the key to the core training on a ball or a BOSU ball is what you do with your breath in relationship to the core. What you want to do is you want to have the shell of your core capable of enduring a tremendous amount of pressure, but you breathing inside of that pressure. And so you're going to pressurize both. So you're pressurized, don't let air in or out. And then you're going to learn how to keep the outer strong where you let the air in and out. So now you're getting a deep coordination between the layers of your core, where the inner diaphragm can be, sustainable, but the outer core is being protective and doing so in an extremely fine-tuned way, where the coordination of your back muscles is that you can now send waves of force through it because you have that subtle control over the strength. And so just simple things like that. And then you can like sort of lever your neck and, wedge it against the wall and sort of, make your neck strong. You can pop up handstands that are so much fun, where you lay on it, you put your hands on the ground and you just pop up to a handstand, come back, pop up to a handstand.
What are those brothers that train with they use the peanut, something brothers? They were NFL coaches.
I don't know. Marv Marinovich.
Yes, Marinovich brothers. And they were using the reflexive training on the peanut Swiss ball. It's great.
Well, they were using, the elasticity of it, and they were using it.
More than the balance, but it's, Yeah,
and again, it comes back to if you have the capacity to be playful on it, I mean, you can balance horizontally on it, you can balance on your knees and your hands on it, and you can use it for different mobility and strength. You got it. That's what you got. Now
that's what I was using it in. I was like putting my bum on it, but then rolling back and having my hands, and just the way I shake around, I could feel my core really working in a healthy way. It's not like you're just doing crunches and you're just building this massive muscle.
What's happening is you're being fed stimuli that your nervous system does not have time to think. So you're learning to react, and then you're learning how to not overreact, because it's often the compensatory action from this tilt that leads to an overreaction on the other, and now you're off.
And that's the one that knocks you off. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's the overreacting, and you're pruning away the overreaction so that now you are more reactive and less scared.
Yeah, and that's training balance, and when you do that, the body starts to open up. But
what it's doing is it's giving you a route where you're going to be able to be so much more functional in so many more circumstances, because your body's not as fundamentally afraid. I'm talking about not even your conscious mind. I'm talking about like, do the nesty plunge on a cement floor. Just fall back and let me see you not flinch. Guarantee you're going to flinch. 100% you're going to flinch. Because your lower brain ain't going to let you not flinch. Yes, you're gonna protect yourself. You're not going perfectly square onto the cement. From 6 feet down, that could be catastrophic.
Cool. Right. So final question, and I don't want, I'm not doing this to, I don't know. I think for you, the invention of the BOSU must have been so exciting to just discover it. How many years ago? 2004?
No, it was 1999.
Oh, 1999. So 23 years ago. So to have that discovery, and for me to like now in 2022, just the end of 2021, to go, holy guacamole, like I see what you've done. And then I'm looking at the views on the video and the comments and looking around the world, and I'm like, I see this, maybe I'm not, maybe we're all just nuts, right? But I'm like, this is genius. And it's like, and the whole fitness industry is just they've not comprehended, some of them obviously, but few have comprehended. People use it upside down. People still make use of it, but what it could actually be used for, I've not seen anyone else do it. And so to come up with that in 99, you went through and go on.
I did not recognize all the capacity I had to learn. do with it and utilize it. We're still learning, so we never want to stop. Relentless pursuit of better.
It's still a baby, yeah.
Yeah, and sort of as a cliffhanger to this last engagement or question, what I would say to the fitness industry out there is I am the greatest biomechanist in human history that we know about because I'm the lucky mouse that got dropped in a bucket of cream. I invented the BOSU ball. You think, what day is it today? It don't matter what day it is today. The bills are paid and I'm flying to China. That's right. So if you have my personality and you're dropped into that bucket of cream, eventually it turns into butter. And now we're going to butter everybody's bread because what Weck method is it is a foundation underneath whatever it is you want to do, whether it's a form of training or a form of activity, sport, life itself. Weck method, calculated and strategic, is a foundation. Both sides utilize, relate to gait, fight, flight. And I think the professionals are going to have to get over the fact that there's this outlier out here who has defined the way that we must train, because ultimately the high jump is performed with the technique that works best, despite the fact that the experts tried to deny that reality and were successful in denying that reality for 8 years.
The Frosby flop you're talking about. But
the Fosbury flop.
Let me guide this, because I know this is the thing. I know it's for you, it's a touchy subject, and I know you're frustrated. You are frustrated. Let's try to just let me lead this. David.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay, man, because I know you're passionate, and I know this can get you. I've seen you be even more frustrated with this, and I want to say, like, you've not even had your flowers yet, and I hope they're coming. Why soon? But I know when you say, "Oh, I'm the greatest biomechanist on the planet," that can sound arrogant to people. I believe it. I hope that more people are able to understand it, because the more that people that practice with it that are able to prove it, the more for me, I'm drifting away from competition. So I don't feel like something like this is so beautiful. I don't feel like it needs to be like competition is almost, you discover this stuff through play. Like it's almost a downgrade to try to have to prove what you've done through people competitively beating other people. Like I want to be a horse. When you see horses, they run in a pack. They don't race each other. Like I want a body that can move and run and be free and use it to the way God designed its potential and intention to run alongside other humans joyously across a mountain, down, running down a trail, an hour's descent, just enjoying the free flowing footwork. And that for me is what I think. I want to see ballet dancers utilize pulses to be able to jump extra high. And, ballet are already on a point of balance and things. I want to see what you've done with Weck method, that you're saying it's so foundational below all these other systems that have existed, that have come about. This is different. You called it X marks the spot in terms of biomechanics, locomotion. That is what I believe it to be as well. And so all the other systems can learn from this, and their systems can still do what they do, but if they recognize true movement and true biomechanics practices, they would acknowledge this and say that is a separate thing. We can do both, and all of them can do both, because what you're doing is foundational and it's balance based, and no one else is talking about balance and talking about true movement, and that can be defined, and you see that. And so I want to say thank you for that. I want you to express how you feel about some of the disheartening. From 99 you invented the BOSU, and you got a lot of pushback from fitness community. If you can share that, but if I can request that you stay humble and not get frustrated, that would help us all here.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of sadness there about how you were treated,
Yeah, I don't like bullies, and I don't appreciate it when someone, less evolved men is really the problem. I used to be one of them. And that
can sound like a harsh thing. Everyone's got their own injuries and problems. So to call
I think there's a part of me. Weck method couldn't be what it is had I not studied fight. So one of the ways that I justify what it is that I train is, you find me a fitness professional who, isn't a great college wrestler or an MMA champ or something like that. You find me any fitness professional in this world, who isn't already like a badass fighter, and you tell them to push me around, it will not happen. I will completely dominate them physically.
I saw a video of you doing that with Nassim. I don't know how to say his name the other day.
Oh, and that is.
And I've played with you, and I've played that with you, and it just I feel so like a brick wall that can be pushed over, and you just feel like water or something. I like it's insane.
What it is it's a combination of sensitivity with strength in the right place at the right time. So that's essentially the game. And it forms a foundation for, if somebody can't take your balance away from you, it's going to be a lot harder for them to beat you in a fight. And if you, when you engage, you can sense and now upset their balance, odds are they're going to lose that fight.
You applied, I want to sort of wrap it and still go into this question. I think we're getting off track from that question.
Okay,
you sort of applied the principles of fight that you learned in martial arts to locomotion, and that's what made you do it differently. And maybe we can actually let's get into this in the next one, because we'll talk about the rope. We'll talk about locomotion a bit more, and we'll get into that.
Right.
But I just want to I want to get into your heart and soul, David. I want to like when you were getting. Could you share and without? Because I know you want to fight back, and I know there's frustration, and I'd love it if you could just.
I'll diffuse it and I'll tell you.
Yeah, you were treated very badly and rudely by a lot of the community that you didn't deserve because you'd done something truly like profound. Can you share like some of the backlash you got from the BOSU and how people tried to smear what you'd done, and how you felt? Okay. You know.
So there's two categories of people who didn't like the BOSU ball, because now fortunately it is shifting, and that helps me,
23 years later they're starting to get it.
Yeah. He who laughs last, and that's gonna be me. So I got to realize and just chill out. But there's two principal camps that didn't like the BOSU ball. One of them doesn't have a grudge against it. It's just a power lifter, strong person looked at it. It's like, that has nothing to offer me, so I don't think about it. So they didn't beat it up. It was just, that's for girls to bounce on, and I lift heavy weights, right? Yep. So that's the first category of people who aren't customers, or who weren't customers, okay? Yeah. The second one is the pernicious one, because it was the science-educated trainer. I have studied in the NSCA, that's the National Strength and Conditioning Association. I have a CS qualification certification. So therefore, my opinion rests on the foundation of the scientific evidence as published and peer-reviewed. So they're coming at it from that approach, which is a pretty intimidating approach if I'm not as expert as you. And now you can start throwing all that science at me, shutting down anything that I say because you have science and I don't, kind of an argument. So it was that community who, as a way of coming up in that community, one way to do that was to bash the BOSU ball as proof that you understood the science, that, the BOSU ball is a gimmick, it actually makes you weaker. And you had people campaigning against it using science. That in 2007, a study was done, it didn't use BOSU balls. And from that study was born this like tens of thousands of well-educated, intelligent, I guess well-meaning people coming after my BOSU ball. Like coming into my yard and, doing like, I did nothing to you. The BOSU ball has done nothing to you. You could just leave it alone. But no, you are telling your whole audience and the world in article after article after blog, because that's what it was. They didn't even have social media when they were bashing the BOSU ball, but it just became the punching bag of the entire like scientific education that wields the power, because they've institutionalized their power. If you want to work as a university strength coach, you can't get the job unless you have the CSCS certification. And when that community, the zeitgeist there is that BOSU balls, you don't dismiss them, you actively say that they suck.
Yeah, people say
They're
they
a bad
make.
product.
Yeah, they did. I've seen that.
Guy who's out to deceive you and make money and all the stuff that jealous guys say. So that's what harmed me, because it's not true. And I consider myself one of the guys who ultimately, if it comes down to a physical encounter, I'm going to do damn well because I've trained for it. And if we're going to talk about movement skill, you find me a trainer, again, who's not a pro athlete or something, who can move better than me.
That's one of the things I want to say that really drew me to you, is the way you move. If you understand movement, you cannot deny it. But also you have to understand that locomotion, because obviously it's not like Ido Portal movement, but in terms of locomotion and the way you move, and you're what, 51, 50?
52, but it's locomotion in all directions. It's not just locomotion. It's like walking straight. It's every direction.
Yeah, it's change. It's the change of direction. It's incredible. It's something different.
I right now am a world-class mover.
Yeah,
literally world-class, and I don't have world-class ability in terms of my strength and my body.
On a certain spectrum, which is efficiency. It can't be it's true, and yet you. But okay, so with the BOSU, you got people who didn't understand the BOSU, never listened to your explanation of it, never practiced the way you shared it to be, and then they put it down because it got clicks or it got magazine sale, whatever it helped them with, and
Correct.
So you've been fighting an uphill battle since then. Because
for practical measures, I would estimate that it's cost me more than $100 million in revenue, more than $100 million. If you do the math, if you do the math on it, it's in excess of $100 million in lost sales, because you have this huge, powerful group in the center of the fitness industry telling you that it's bad. And so it's catastrophic. The BOSU ball should be more universal than it is.
I know. So, I agree. Yeah.
So
should be in every home. In the Jetsons, in the future, it will be in every Jetson home. No.
And I think how I look at it perhaps is maybe it was something that was a necessary irritant that made me so just rage inside because of the unfairness of it, and that personal wound where if you're going to wound me, then I'm going to kill you. Feel it.
But so that, I mean, that's a whole conversation for another day, because I love biomechanics and the physical mechanics. This is a whole nother chapter that people that listen to this podcast know I talk about, and that's soul mechanics. And so we can maybe have that conversation more in private, but that is God's law of attraction worked. I don't want to get into this right now, but to bring you this moment, because there must have been some childhood feeling that felt like when you're being misunderstood, you felt that rage towards them. Did it feel like a moment from your childhood that you could relate it to, or not? It just felt like a whole new.
Yeah, I can tell you one.
Go on, please.
Like just kids are mean type of a thing. I remember once in kindergarten, the kindergarten teacher told us, in no uncertain terms, you are not allowed to bring sticks into the classroom. So all the little sticks that you can find out on the playground and the little woods next to it, like you can't bring it into the classroom. And so I'm just being a good little boy. And there was another boy who grabbed some sticks, put it in his pocket, and went in the classroom. And so I said to the teacher, I said, excuse me, he brought sticks into the classroom. We're not allowed to do that. And she fucking ripped me. She was like, don't be a tattletale. It's just like, holy fuck. Like, I'm just trying to follow the rules and contribute to the, to whatever this is. And so that makes me angry. Yeah. That
it makes
hypocrisy and injustice make me, it enrages me in ways that I can't explain.
Well, I think that's plagued a big part of your life in a way.
Injustice, when not meritocracy and it's something else.
Yeah.
That makes my blood boil to the point where it almost feels like it's connected to an eternal type of like feeling of, oh, this is unjust and this cannot be.
It's a big pain. I think do you not find, can you, you're someone who I've seen express emotions, like I've seen you cry and things. Do you not feel that there is, can you not connect that rage to a certain sadness below it? Like there is, and that might be terrifying to get into, but I feel like anger is more of a, and this is a cover-up emotion for a sadness, and it's a way to feel powerful when you feel powerless. That's what we do.
Yeah,
right.
Correct. But I do think that, sort of the game that we're thrust into, I do believe that my anger did act as a bridge mechanism that, that is getting to the point, or gotten me to the point where I can provide information valuable enough that my anger can translate into positive peer pressure, where I'm able to forgive because the change is happening. So if the change doesn't happen, I will die a very angry man eventually.
So surely you should be the first to change, and you should, without the external change, like forgiveness can't happen because they've said sorry. Like forgiveness without them saying sorry is even harder. And that's the place. Yeah. If you can get to that's some real empowerment,
Well, yes, it is. But at the same time, I'll let Jesus and Gandhi do that stuff. Like turn the other cheek. For me is you punch here, I turn and I fucking smash your head and I break it.
Yeah.
So that's turn the other cheek.
Okay. I don't want to be a therapist for you here, David, but
I'm just saying, and I'm a kind person who doesn't want to hurt people.
Well, this is the thing, right? I know I feel a lot of love and passion in you, but this is a huge hurdle that I think you've had a lot of feedback from me and people around you, that with the anger, and I'm not going to be able to guide you through that.
Here's what it is. The anger doesn't need to disappear and not acknowledge it or try to deny it.
The anger isn't loving, David.
The outward, but if you'll notice on my social media and everything I'm putting out right now, the edge is not on there anymore. It's much more positive right now.
Oh, in terms of that, but I want to help David, your soul, like at a soul level, like anger is like holding, what they say, it's like holding a hot rock, right? It's only hurting you, and it's covering some, it's definitely covering some big sadness that that's going to be a journey to go into. But it's yeah, I see clearly it's not, you've got a lot of love and a lot to give, and I think that if you can work through that anger and take the time to try to connect it to what's below, and let go of this blame of other people, and that there's almost, do you believe in God? Like in
Yes, I do.
Yes, you do. Okay, so, and you believe in this design, the beautiful body He's designed. So
yes, but the thing about it is, if we talk about fractal layers, the tangible injustice that I feel like I can make a difference and am making a difference and ultimately change it is the physical education. But
yes.
But now this add complexity in a layer. If we take it out in scope, the nonsense that's happening in this world right now, that enrages me at an eternal level. Okay. So
but there's a lack. Here's the thing. There's a lack of faith that in God's laws that He created, that we want to then take control and go, hang on a minute, they've bypassed God's laws and they're able to do that, and that's injustice. That I'm going to play karma queen or karma police and correct it. And I think that's something I've come to, because I recognize there's a lot of anger in myself with certain, and it's easy to project that person said that, this and that, and more to try to connect it to my sadness and not try to control that, and have some faith in God's laws and focus on how I'm being unloving. And the thing is, I've come to realize anger projected at another being, at another soul, no matter what they've done to you, is an unloving act. And you can say, leave that for Jesus and Gandhi. But I think the more we can strive to be more like that and let go of the anger of these, now they banned me from functional patterns, and I've still got stuff to work through with that. And, that's I still recognize that's a law of attraction from my own childhood, my own kindergarten experiences and things with my parents, and not try to project that and try to, I just feel like it's helped me to grow at a soul level, and then that can make the body feel, healthier and things as well. So I just wanted to try and connect this biomechanics, the soul mechanics, And I think that's a huge thing to explore that could help that. And the more I think you let go of wanting that to, you are letting go, and you look at the results. The world is changing to start to recognize what you're doing, because I think you are doing some work. You have worked through a lot, but I also recognize
but I do think that there's just the pragmatics of life, where it's, if someone entered your home to kill your child, sort of thing, at what point are you justified to put evil on another person?
I agree, right? But that's a different example. We're talking about a guy's, poo-pooing
no,
your
what I'm talking about is choking liberty and freedom out and extinguishing the light of consciousness because what's happening, okay? And that's what's happening.
Oh, I mean, we could go to the political side of things, but if that is a giant manifestation of the collective consciousness, and we're not able to look at our own actions of where we're being unloving, we can't then project anger, because that's being unloving, and it's like
here's my fantasy that I would like to see play out is we educate the children better to be more self-reliant and more robust through physical education first. If I'm not in pain, I'm less likely to be a jerk. Okay, if I'm not like hit with the dodgeball 10 times in the head and picked last, I'm likely to not be so upset. So if we can teach children to relate to themselves better so they can relate to others better, I think we can come out of this, because the people persecuting us now, eventually they're going to die. And it's not too long from now. So generationally, if we can preserve liberty and we can educate and empower humanity, and then team up with the machine to do the things that we don't need to do anymore, so that humanity can really be about expressing consciousness and this more collective conscious that says, like, I don't need to cheat anymore. I don't need to sell something that's bad for somebody because that makes more money, because the machine is capable of means of production where there's no more scarcity, and it's all energy management, and then doing it for the right reasons, not trying to propagate whatever your little, vision of the world is, because that's, you need the contribution from the outliers. There might be some individual that otherwise, if liberty weren't alive, they would not have the capacity, wherewithal.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting in, and I agree. We do need that freedom, but I think the more we can take and look at our own stuff is what we can. That's all we can control right now. And I love that. I do love the.
It was a moderate voice. I appreciate you as a moderate voice, and to the extent that your sphere of influence influences mine, it influences in a positive direction for sure. I am extremely honest, so I don't like pretending. If
hey, that's good. We can just have the conversation. We can share our sides, and that's fine. It's all love. So I love the vision of physically educate the children. I think there needs some. Our approach to emotional education is, I have to say, more important, but that physical education is almost completely wrong when they're 8 years old and they're taught to play sport against each other, but they're not taught how to coordinate their body with a rope, and that's where I feel like we should go. But I just want to say thank you so much. We'll do this again soon. If you please, I'll leave the comments open on YouTube. Let us know what you thought of this. If you have any questions for David, maybe we can get into that next time. But thanks for being open to this. Thanks for sharing your story. I truly appreciate what you do. I want to help shift. We do need the freedom of speech to help spread things like this. Otherwise, the direction America's headed is quite worrying to observe, I must say, but I'm trying to not get too political with it. But yeah, just thank you so much, David, for having this chat with us. And I hope everyone listening, thank you for listening. I hope you got something out of it.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you for everybody who listened. And my mantra is every step stronger. And so if you're able to take something useful, that was worth it.
Great. And so, yeah, you can check David on Instagram at @DavidWeck, I think. Is it?
Yep, that's right.
Yeah. Also check out @Weck Method on YouTube, weckmethod.com. That's all of his inventions if you want to dig deeper, if you've not looked into it.
Tell people to follow Chris Chamberlain as well.
Yeah, Savage Protocols on Instagram.
it's @_Christopher.Chamberlain.
Okay. Yeah, so if you want to see an expression of a human who's epitomized and understood and been around David for years, training with the principals and is young and athletic. Chris Chamberlain, who used to be Savage Protocols, is a great expression of that to the absolute, the highest degree so far. And for my stuff, if you want to check it out, I rediscover.com, RDSCVR.com, and I recently released a foot course which has got a lot of some of David's BOSU stuff in there. It's got the soul roll along with some other the hyper arch athleticism stuff with the toe curls, and big up Chongji for that. So it's a foot course that really, all the stuff within there that I found helped my feet go from being weak to being a lot stronger is within that course. So you can check that out. But yeah, stay tuned for the next episode. Once again, thank you, David. Speak to you guys soon.